Chapter 1: The Seed of Doubt. In a small village nestled between rolling hills and flowing rivers, there lived a young man named Aric. He had always been curious, his mind hungry for answers to the mysteries of the world. While his peers were content with the simplicity of daily life, Aric often wandered the forests, spoke with the elders, and questioned the very nature of existence. He felt a deep calling within him, an urge to seek knowledge that transcended the mundane concerns of his people. Aric's father, a simple craftsman, often warned him of the dangers of seeking answers beyond what the world provided. Contentment, he would say, is the path to peace. Striving for more than what is given can only bring pain. But Aric could not shake the feeling that there was something greater, something beyond the village, beyond the hills, beyond the limits of his understanding. One evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, Aric sat by the river, staring into its depths. The water flowed tirelessly, never ceasing, always moving forward. He had heard stories of great philosophers and sages who had traveled far and wide in search of wisdom. They spoke of seeing the world in ways ordinary men could not, of understanding the invisible threads that connected all things. But Aric had never met such men, at least not in person. Still, the idea of their wisdom haunted him, pulling at his soul. It was then that he saw something unusual. A stone, larger than any he had seen before, lay at the edge of the river. Its surface was smooth, polished by the flowing water, but there was something strange about it. It seemed to glow faintly in the twilight, as though it held some ancient secret. Aric reached down, his fingers brushing the stone's surface. A sudden warmth spread through his hand, a strange sensation that made his heart race. He picked up the stone and held it in his palm. It felt alive, as though it had a consciousness of its own, and in that moment, Aric felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. He understood, in the deepest part of his being, that this stone was more than just a rock. It was a messenger, a key to something beyond his current understanding. With the stone in hand, Aric stood up, a renewed sense of purpose flooding his chest. The world around him seemed different now, as if the very air he breathed was filled with untold knowledge. He could hear the whispers of the wind, the song of the birds, the rustle of the trees. All seemed to be speaking to him. The stone, he knew, had chosen him. He was meant to go on a journey, to discover the wisdom that lay hidden beneath the surface of the world. But where would he go? What would he seek? The answers were not clear, but one thing was certain. His life would never be the same again. As Aric made his way back to the village, the stone safely tucked into his pocket, he thought of the elders' teachings. They spoke often of the importance of balance, of humility, and of living in harmony with nature. Yet, something inside him told him that true wisdom was not found in conformity, but in the courage to question, to seek, and to explore the unknown. The next morning, as the first rays of dawn broke over the hills, Aric gathered his belongings. He had decided to leave. He did not know where he was going or what he would find, but he knew that the path ahead was his to walk. His heart was filled with both excitement and fear, but above all, it was filled with an unshakable belief that the journey would lead him to something greater than he had ever imagined. Chapter 2: The Path of the Wanderer. Aric left the village at dawn, his heart heavy with the weight of his decision but also light with the freedom of the unknown. As he walked along the narrow paths that wound through the countryside, the stone in his pocket seemed to hum with an energy he could not explain. It was as though the very earth beneath his feet was alive, guiding him towards something important. For days he wandered through forests and fields, never stopping for long in one place. He found shelter in caves and in the homes of strangers, offering to help with labor in exchange for food and rest. Yet, despite the kindness he encountered, a sense of emptiness lingered in his heart. He felt as though he was searching for something he could not name, something that lay just beyond his grasp. One evening, as Aric camped by a fire under the stars, he gazed up at the vastness of the sky. It was a sight he had seen many times before, but tonight it felt different. The stars seemed to shimmer more brightly, as though they were speaking to him, each one a distant echo of some forgotten truth. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence. You seek, but do not yet know what you seek. Aric jumped to his feet, his hand instinctively reaching for the stone in his pocket. Standing before him was an old man, bent and frail, yet his eyes gleamed with a wisdom that seemed to pierce through the darkness. His face was weathered by time, and his clothes were worn and tattered, but there was an air of power about him, as if he had seen the very fabric of the world and understood its deepest mysteries. I do not understand, Aric stammered, still unsure if the man was real or a figment of his imagination. The old man smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. Most people wander through life without ever realizing the true nature of their journey. They seek answers, but they do not ask the right questions. You, young one, have begun to ask the right questions. Aric felt a chill run down his spine. What are the right questions? What is it that I am meant to seek? The old man stepped closer, his eyes never leaving Aric's. You seek wisdom, but wisdom is not something you can simply find. It must be earned, through experience, through trial, through suffering, and through understanding. To seek wisdom, you must first learn to look beyond the surface of things. The world is not as it appears. It is a mirror, reflecting back to you what you need to see, not what you want to see. Aric's mind raced as he tried to understand the old man's words. But how do I learn to see beyond the surface? He asked. The old man's smile deepened. That, young one, is a question you must answer for yourself. The path you walk is yours alone. But I will offer you this. Wisdom is not found in answers, but in the questions you ask. Seek the truth within yourself, and the world will reveal its secrets to you. With that, the old man turned and began to walk away, disappearing into the night as silently as he had appeared. Aric sat by the fire, his thoughts swirling like the flames before him. The old man's words echoed in his mind, and for the first time he felt a deep sense of purpose. It was not the answers he needed, but the right questions. His journey was not just about seeking knowledge, but about understanding the very nature of his own soul. The next day, Aric set off once more, but this time with a new determination. He did not know where his path would lead, but he knew that every step he took, every person he met, and every challenge he faced would bring him closer to understanding the deeper truths of the world. The stone in his pocket, once just an object of curiosity, now felt like a guide, a symbol of the wisdom that awaited him. As he traveled, Aric met many others along the way: farmers, traders, healers, and warriors. Each person had their own story, their own struggles, and their own version of truth. He listened to their words, observed their actions, and learned from their experiences. But despite the lessons he gained from each encounter, something still gnawed at him, a sense that there was something more he had yet to understand. One evening, as he sat by a fire once more, Aric's mind returned to the old man's words. Seek the truth within yourself. What did that truly mean? How could he find truth within himself when he felt so lost? It was then that he realized the answer was not something that could be grasped all at once. It was a process, a journey that would unfold gradually, like the petals of a flower opening to the sunlight. Chapter 3: The Test of Silence. As Aric journeyed through the vast forests and across windswept plains, he found that the path to wisdom was not as straightforward as he had hoped. The more he sought, the more questions arose, and the more his mind seemed to churn with uncertainty. Every person he met had their own perspective, their own truth, and each seemed to contradict the last. One day, as he reached the edge of a dense forest, he encountered a woman sitting in quiet meditation by the side of the road. Her clothes were simple, but her presence was powerful. She exuded a sense of peace, as if she were one with the world around her. Aric approached cautiously, feeling an inexplicable pull toward her. "Excuse me," he called softly. "I seek wisdom. Can you help me?" The woman opened her eyes, and Aric was struck by how calm they were, as though they had seen the depths of the world and understood its secrets. She smiled gently and gestured for him to sit beside her. "Wisdom," she said, "is not something you can simply ask for. It is something you must earn through patience, through silence, and through self-reflection. You must learn to listen, not with your ears, but with your heart. Aric was taken aback. Listen with my heart? He repeated, confused. The woman nodded. Your mind is full of noise, questions, doubts, desires. But the heart knows things that the mind cannot understand. It speaks in whispers, in moments of stillness. To hear it, you must first learn to quiet the noise within. Aric felt a deep sense of unease. He had always been one to seek answers, to question everything, to engage his mind in a constant search for meaning. But now, for the first time, he was being asked to stop and listen. To be still. This was a challenge unlike any he had faced before. Why is silence so important? He asked, trying to grasp the meaning behind her words. Silence, the woman explained, is the space where the truth reveals itself. In the stillness, your true self can emerge. But you must let go of the need for answers, the need for validation. You must be willing to sit in the discomfort of not knowing. Aric sat quietly beside her, his thoughts racing. How could he stop seeking answers? How could he learn to listen to his heart when his mind was so restless? The more he tried to silence his thoughts, the louder they seemed to grow. The questions piled on top of each other, each one more urgent than the last. What was he supposed to do with the stone? Why had the old man given it to him? Was there some grand revelation waiting for him at the end of this journey? Hours passed, but Aric did not speak. The woman's calm presence seemed to soothe the storm in his mind, even if he didn't yet fully understand what she had meant. In the quiet, he began to notice things he had never before paid attention to. The rustling of the leaves in the trees, the distant chirping of birds, the gentle flow of the stream nearby. The world was alive, vibrant, and full of unseen beauty. When the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the forest floor, the woman finally spoke again. You have been patient, she said, and now you are ready for the next step of your journey. But remember this, silence is not an escape from the world. It is a way of connecting more deeply with it. Do not mistake stillness for inaction. Aric stood up, feeling a sense of quiet strength within him. The woman's words had planted a seed in his heart, one that he knew would continue to grow in the days to come. He did not yet fully understand what she had taught him, but he felt that he was one step closer to the truth. Thank you, he said, bowing his head in respect. The woman nodded and closed her eyes once more. Go in peace, young seeker. The path ahead is still long, but you are on the right course. As Aric continued on his journey, the lessons of silence echoed in his mind. He was beginning to understand that wisdom was not something to be found through relentless seeking or external knowledge. It was something that came from within, from the quiet moments of reflection and stillness. It was as if the more he let go of his need for answers, the more the world itself began to speak to him. But Aric knew that his journey was far from over. There was still much he had to learn, and he had not yet found the answer to the question that burned most brightly in his heart. What was the true meaning of the stone? Chapter 4. The Stone's Secret. Days turned into weeks, and Aric's journey continued. The lessons he had learned from the woman in the forest had become a guiding force in his life. He no longer rushed to find answers, but instead sought to listen and observe, to let the world unfold before him. The stone, which he had once thought of as a simple object of curiosity, had become a symbol of his quest for understanding. Yet, despite all his reflections and experiences, the stone remained silent in his pocket, offering no answers. One day, as Aric wandered along a rocky cliffside, he stumbled upon a small, hidden cave. Curiosity led him inside, where the air was cool and still. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he noticed something strange, a faint light emanating from the back of the cave. He approached cautiously, his heart racing with anticipation. At the far end of the cave, he found an ancient altar, covered in dust and cobwebs. Resting upon the altar was a stone much like the one he had carried for so long, but this one was different. It shimmered with a soft, ethereal glow, and as Aric drew closer, he felt an overwhelming sense of recognition. This was the same stone, or at least a version of it. As he reached out to touch it, the stone in his pocket began to warm. The sensation was familiar, and for the first time, Aric felt a connection between the two stones. They were not separate, but part of the same whole, part of a larger truth that he was just beginning to understand. Suddenly, the stone in his hand began to pulse with light, and a voice, not unlike the old man's, whispered in his mind. "You have traveled far, young seeker, and now the time has come to unlock the truth." Aric's heart skipped a beat. The stone, the journey, the questions, all of it was leading to this moment. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and allowed himself to feel the truth that lay within the stone. And in that moment it became clear. Wisdom was not a destination, but a journey. The stone was not a key to a single truth, but a symbol of the endless search for understanding. Chapter 5. The Cave of Echoes. As Aric stood before the altar, his hand resting on the glowing stone, he felt a profound shift in the air around him. The cave, once silent and still, seemed to come alive with energy. The walls hummed with an unseen force, vibrating ever so gently, and the air was thick with anticipation. The voice in his mind spoke again, but this time, it was not the old man's voice, nor the voice of the woman in the forest. It was something older, something deeper. "You seek truth," the voice whispered. "But truth is not something you find, it is something you become." Aric's heart raced as the words reverberated through him. What did it mean to become truth? How could something so intangible, so elusive, be embodied? The stone in his hand pulsed once more, and before his eyes, the cave around him seemed to shimmer and distort. The walls shifted, revealing images and symbols that danced in the dim light. Figures, both human and otherworldly, appeared before him, their faces serene yet knowing, as if they had seen the cycles of time and the rise and fall of civilizations. Aric stepped back, his mind swirling with confusion and awe. The images seemed to speak to him, but not in words. They spoke in emotions, in feelings, in flashes of understanding that came and went in an instant. His mind struggled to grasp their meaning, but the more he tried, the more elusive they became. The voice returned, softer this time, like a distant echo. "You are not meant to understand all at once. Truth unfolds in layers, in moments of quiet realization. What you see before you is but a glimpse. The journey you are on is one of transformation, not knowledge." Aric's hand tightened around the stone, and he realized, with a sudden clarity, that the stone had always been more than just an object. It was a catalyst, a guide, a symbol of his inner journey. It had chosen him, but not to give him answers. It had chosen him to show him how to find the answers within himself. As the images on the cave walls began to fade, Aric felt a deep sense of peace wash over him. The urgency that had once consumed him, the need to understand, to know, to find the answers, began to dissolve. In its place was a quiet acceptance, a willingness to embrace the journey without knowing where it would lead. The stone grew warm in his hand, and with a final pulse of light, it returned to its ordinary state, no longer glowing but still radiating a subtle energy. The cave was silent again, its secrets seemingly locked away for now. But Aric knew that what he had witnessed was not an illusion. It was a message, a lesson that could only be understood through experience. He took one last look at the altar before turning to leave the cave. As he walked out into the daylight, the world seemed brighter, more vivid, as though he was seeing it for the first time. The trees, the sky, the very earth beneath his feet, all seemed to be alive with meaning, as if they were speaking directly to him. Aric's journey had changed him. He no longer sought to understand everything, but instead, he sought to live fully, to experience each moment with presence and awareness. The questions still lingered in his mind, but they were no longer burdensome. They were simply part of the flow of life, unfolding at their own pace. Chapter 6. The Circle of Life. As the days passed, Aric continued his journey, though now he moved with a quiet purpose. He no longer felt the need to search desperately for answers. Instead, he took each step with intention, living in the present moment, trusting that the path would reveal itself when the time was right. One afternoon, he found himself at the edge of a vast plain, the wind whipping through the tall grass. The horizon stretched out before him, endless and open. For the first time in a long while, Aric felt a deep sense of gratitude. The world was vast, yes, but it was also beautiful in its imperfection. The people he had met, the lessons he had learned, the moments of silence he had embraced, all of it had brought him to this point. He sat down in the grass, the stone resting in his palm, and closed his eyes. The sound of the wind, the distant calls of birds, the rustling of the grass, all of it seemed to converge into a single, harmonious melody. He listened, not with his ears, but with his heart, and in that moment he understood. The wisdom he had sought was not some distant truth to be uncovered. It was already within him, within all of us. It was the stillness beneath the surface of life, the quiet pulse that connected everything in the universe. It was the unspoken truth that could only be felt, not understood. Aric smiled, a deep sense of peace settling within him. He knew now that the journey was not about finding the right answers, but about learning to live in harmony with the world as it was, embracing the mystery without needing to solve it. He rose to his feet, the wind blowing through his hair, and began to walk once more. His journey was far from over, but he no longer felt lost. He was a part of the world, just as the world was a part of him. And, with each step he took, he knew that the path ahead, though unknown, would always be guided by the wisdom of the stones, the whispers of the wind, and the quiet wisdom that resided within his own heart. Epilogue: The wisdom of the wanderer. Many years passed, and Aric's name became known in the villages and cities he had passed through. He was no longer a young man seeking answers, but a sage in his own right, a wanderer who had embraced the journey of life and understood its deepest truths. He spoke of the importance of stillness, of silence, and of listening to the world around you. He taught others to seek not knowledge, but wisdom, a wisdom that could only be found by living fully, by experiencing the world with an open heart and a quiet mind. The stone, though it had lost its glow, remained a constant companion, a reminder of the journey that had shaped him. It was no longer a symbol of a distant quest, but a reflection of the wisdom he had learned. That truth is not something to be found, but something to be lived. And so, Aric continued his journey, not as a seeker of answers, but as a teacher of questions, showing others that the path to wisdom was not about knowing everything, but about understanding the beauty of not knowing.